Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Darla Romfo, President and CEO of Children's Scholarship Fund.
Good evening. I want to apologize in advance if I cough because I have the lingering effects of a cold. God talks to you through everything in your life, and I was thinking this week he was telling me to sit down and shut up, but here I am anyway. So I hope I don't cough. And Elizabeth, if I do, you can come and finish my speech. So thank you so much for asking me to be here tonight. One thing I want to say before I start is how much I appreciate all of you. I especially love working with Tom, with John. I don't know I work with a lot of groups around the country, but I have to say that Brooklyn and Queens is a special group of people. As I listen tonight, the faith part of this comes through so clearly, and that just really warms my heart. Catholic schools have had so much to do with my own faith journey. So by way of context, the Children's Scholarship Fund, which I run, is a K-8 scholarship granting organization. We have partners in about 20 states. This year we're helping about 26,000 kids around the country. We also run a program in New York City, and we help over 1,700 kids in conjunction with the Futures in Education. We're not a religious organization, but over 80% of the children that we help use their scholarships to go to Catholic schools. Since we started offering scholarships in 1999, we've helped over 35,000 kids in the 5 boroughs of New York City. So you might be wondering, why would a non-religious organization invest so much money in sending kids to Catholic schools? Well, it has to do with something that is a universal little c Catholic principle, and that is that parents are the first educators of their children. The home is the first school. A school should act in concert with the parent as an extension of the home. Parents are in the best position to choose the right school for their child, including one that is consistent with their faith, their values, and beliefs. And as your bishop said earlier, there's never been a time when it's more important to make that choice, because the rest of the culture, the rest of society, sadly, our public schools are teaching things that are counter to many of the things that are consistent with our faith. This is where the whole notion of school choice comes from. After all, parents who can afford to buy a home in a good school district, pay private school tuition, they can exercise private school choice. School choice actually says that all parents, regardless of their income, should be able to exercise that right. As a country, we've committed to pay for education with taxpayer dollars. That shouldn't mean that only the government can run the schools. You may be surprised to learn that in many countries like England, Sweden, even the Netherlands, our neighbor to the north, Canada, many other countries, taxpayer dollars follow the children even to religious schools. And we think of those countries as much more liberal than us, and how could that be? But that is exactly what happens. It's called education pluralism. The governments in those countries fund education, and they regulate the schools to some degree, but they don't have to be in charge of operating every single school. And even poor children in those countries can exercise school choice and go to a religious school. So there's precedent for doing this everywhere. The United States is so far behind in our thinking on how to deliver education. While school choice legislation has had success on a state-by-state basis, the number of children in this country attending private schools with publicly funded dollars is abysmally low. It's like 518,000 children out of a total of 56 million school-aged children. And 100,000 of these kids, roughly 20%, are in one state, Florida, which I'm proud to say, actually, the school choice provision that happened there, it started with a Children's Scholarship Fund organization out of Tampa. And that's a huge success story. There's been huge strides and gains in the academic results for children. But as we know in New York, there's a lot of political opposition, and it comes largely from the teachers' unions. Many of you are probably familiar with the efforts in New York over roughly a 5-year period. There was a huge effort to get a tax credit scholarship passed here. You guys worked hard on it. Everybody in Brooklyn and Queens worked hard on it. It seems so close to getting to the finish line, getting over the finish line, but then it just never quite did. And that would have made it possible for donors like you to give charitable contributions to Futures in Education, the Children's Scholarship Fund, and get a tax credit for it. Now the political barriers in New York are even higher. And frankly, as I look at the hostility towards religion in general and the Catholic Church in particular, I am concerned that tax dollars flowing to religious institutions will start to come with directives from our government that will make it impossible to stay true to our faith, especially in a state like New York. I'm sure you've probably heard of the substantially equivalent requirement. What if that was extended to things like what the Catholic Church teaches about the definition of marriage or matters related to human sexuality? It almost seems like in New York we should get prepared to live with less government money rather than more. So where does that leave us, and what can we do? Unfortunately, there isn't a piece of legislation that I can tell you to get behind or a politician I can tell you to visit, but I do have some closing thoughts to leave with you, and they're really coming on a personal level more than as a CEO of the Children's Scholarship Fund. First of all, we do need to stay vigilant in protecting the right to exercise our religious beliefs in the public square, including in our schools, and we should advocate for the resources that we are entitled to under the present laws and try to make sure those laws don't push us further and further out of getting funding from the government. And maybe there will be a miracle. We are people of faith, and there will be a chance to actually fight for school choice again in New York. But like I said, the final thought that I want to leave you with is much more personal and closer to home. It's coming from me as a fellow Christian and a convert to Catholicism who holds my faith to be the most important thing in my life. It will affect not only the work you do in Catholic schools, but all aspects of your life, your work, and your family. This is not a challenge to come up with a new plan. I don't think we've had any shortage of attempts at planning our way out of our problems, but that doesn't diminish the need to use our brains and our abilities to plan as purposefully as possible whenever we can. But my challenge to myself and to you as I even operate CSF and I realize how so much is really not in my hands, my challenge to myself and to you is to become a holy person, a saint. What would happen if every person in this room was intent on letting God make them into a saint, an ordinary person who lives a holy life in total obedience to God's will, surrendering everything to God? Leon Bloy, a fervent Roman Catholic convert, once said, "There is only one tragedy in the end, not to have been a saint." That's what it all comes down to in our lives, isn't it? We're all going to have an ending, and we're all going to look back, and a lot of the things that we worried over, they're not going to matter. We will all stand before God one day and be accountable for our lives. And I think because you're all in this room tonight, that the schools are a part of your pathway to sainthood, part of mine too. Only by the conversion of ourselves can we hope to transform society, our church, and our schools. Attorney General Barr said in his speech at Notre Dame recently that education is not vocational training. If we don't pass on our faith and moral conviction to our children in full vigor, all is lost. And how do we pass on our faith in full vigor? By having our own vigorous living faith in the person of Jesus Christ. Christianity is above all an encounter with a person, Jesus. He must become the central figure of our lives. Shut your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself as one of the apostles who, with one word, one glance from Jesus, left everything and followed him. That is the same compelling Jesus who beckons us always, everywhere, and meets us in his real presence in the Eucharist at every occurrence in the Mass. When people ask me, why did you become a Catholic? Especially when there are all these things happening in the Catholic Church. And when I found out that Catholics believed that Jesus was really present in the Eucharist, and when God gave me the faith to believe that myself, and I knew I wanted to be as intimate as I could with Jesus as possible, why wouldn't I become a Catholic? What other choice was there? G.K. Chesterton said that it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting. It's that it has never truly been tried. I leave you tonight with that challenge, to truly try Christianity, to truly try Catholicism. It's now my prayer for myself every day, because I don't have the answers to I face the same things that you face. How are we going to raise the money? How are we going to keep this going? But, God just asks us to be faithful, and he wants to make every one of us saints. Like Mother Teresa said, God has lots of money. Think about it, he does. He's doing something else here. He brought all of you together tonight on a fall night when you could have been doing a lot of other things. You're here because you're committed to this. You're here because you care, really care. And he can do so much with the people in this room if you're fully committed and all in. I ask him every day to just help me to do the things that day that will help him to fulfill the purpose that he has for my life, for CSF, for all the kids that we're helping, for his schools, for the world, whatever my little part is. And he's got a plan and a part for every one of us. Every one of us has a unique gift, a unique talent, something you're doing that nobody else in the world can do. Please join me in that prayer. How different will my life look a year from now if I invite God to do this in my life? How different will your life look a year from now? Think about it, and please join me in that effort. Thank you, and God bless.